to Flatwater Free Conversation. I am Michael Severe. I'm joined by Omaha, Nebraska native and, of course, award-winning filmmaker Alexander Payne. We appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad we can make this work.
Happy to be here. He's been at me for a while, and I've been a little slippery, so we finally made it work today.
I want to kind of first off talk to me about growing up in Omaha and in Nebraska and how that influenced you in terms of filmmaking. Was that a big part of what you became? Because this community is unique compared to a lot of other places.
I thought you said this is going to be easy. I think that's a hard question to try to gauge, because you try to glom on to what you're conscious of, and then there's a whole vast arena that you're probably unconscious of. Mm-hmm. And your question said Omaha, which I could speak to somewhat. Nebraska, which is harder, mm-hmm. because, there's a whole big wide state out there that's quite different. Yeah. Our ethos is informed by our presence in this fine state, but day-to-day living is quite different, is it not? Mm-hmm. This is the Paris of the plains. And I learned a lot about, I can't say the whole state, but being in the rural areas when I made my film Nebraska 10 years ago. It's a nice education. I don't know, man. I don't want to say stuff that's very that we Omahans try to congratulate ourselves on, or and Nebraskans like we're nice, we're honest, we're plain spoken. We are, I wouldn't exactly say conflict avoidant, but kind of are conflict avoidant. And if we do enter into conflicts, we try to do so in the most kind of fair-minded, let's not get too upset about things kind of way. Starting when I left Omaha and went to college in California and then graduate school, and so near San Francisco, I went to Stanford, mm-hmm. and then I went to UCLA and obviously in LA for graduate school. I would invariably find that my best friends were fellow Midwesterners. Mm. Somehow there's a shared, I'm going to use that word again, ethos. There's just a shared wavelength, sensibility that we have. And I find that we Midwesterners, we Omahans are, we try not to be too proud of but we're kind of proud we have that vibe, mm-hmm. basically being plain spoken, trying to be fair-minded. Like I always think about in this time of the much discussed political divide, we grew up in a state where very Republican state, and those of us who maybe weren't so conservative, everyone still got along. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, we're going to have breakfast together, at the diner, but we're not going to bring that up. Or if we do, it's like, well, kind of kid around about it. And I'd like to, I hope that we can maintain that. Speaking about politics for a second, that vibe. And then in terms of, kind of free associate on your question here. In terms of what I do in movies, it's very interesting that Omaha in particular and Nebraska in general has produced so many people who have distinguished themselves in film mm-hmm. over the years, going back to the silent days. I could say the list. But that's really interesting. And when I trot that list out to people like, oh, you're from Nebraska, how'd you get into the movie? I go, well. Yeah. And then I start reciting the list of famous.
Lloyd, what's his?
Harold Lloyd.
Harold Lloyd, yes.
Burchard, Nebraska.
Yeah.
But, Montgomery Clift, Marlon Brando, Henry Fonda, Johnny Carson. Yeah. On and on and on.
It's amazing the way that works.
Fred Astaire, of course.
What about growing up in a Greek family? I grew up in an African-American family, huge dinners. We had fun. I see Greek families on TV and on screen. And was it like that? Or you guys were around food at a restaurant in your family? What was it like growing up in that family?
I came to feel lucky that I'm from a subculture mm-hmm. within the tapestry of the mainstream culture in America, So I grew up very much with a, not just American, but Greek American identity. I think more so than many other European ethnic groups. Greeks really cling to their heritage. Greeks do, Armenians do, Jews do. Mm-hmm. Italians somewhat also, but are a little bit more assimilated, I would say. Irish, the same thing, but kind of from the smaller countries and countries which have had a lot of persecution over the years. Usually subcultures remain tight among persecuted people. Mm-hmm. Black people, Jewish
Sure.
people, Armenians, Greeks to some degree. So I think that so here's a connection I'll make, linking your two first questions, that as a Nebraskan going out to the coasts to do flashier work, let's say in my case, film, I'm identified as being kind of from a subculture of, oh yeah, he's from Nebraska. In fact, he still lives in Omaha, and isn't that interesting? Well, then within Omaha, I grew up within a subculture there, an ethnic one. And I can't say it's Greek. Like when I'm a Greek citizen now, and I go to Greece a lot and stuff like that. And they say, well, you're Greek. And I say, that's true, but let's be specific. I'm actually not Greek. I'm Greek American.
Right.
And these ethnicities forge their own kind of new hybrid identities in the country of the country they immigrated to.
Yeah.
But in both cases, both as a Nebraskan in California and in New York, and as a Greek American in general, it gives you a participant observer. Sorry, I'm being so long-winded, but you get to be a participant observer. Mm-hmm. So you're participating in what you're doing, but you're also observing it because of your background from a subculture.
Interesting. And that's the whole city of Omaha is like that, because whether it is Pulaski Park for the Polish people or South Omaha, the Czechs there,
Right.
It really is an interesting, and it all happened like within about 40 years to where everybody moved.
Except Westo. That's
So,
all.
well,
That's all the same.
That didn't count. That didn't point. What's your favorite Greek restaurant in Omaha?
Oh, that's dangerous.
I live about 6 blocks from Greek Isles.
Okay.
And on the other side of us, where Katie's used to be, which is now Fetta's.
Right.
So we go to both.
Oh, what's my favorite? What Greek restaurant?
Greek restaurant, yeah.
Oh, I would be pilloried if I said one. But Greek restaurant, Greek Islands is excellent.
Yeah.
My family goes way back with their family. My father and grandfather helped them when they were first getting started. Jim and Jenny's Greek Village on 90th Street is excellent. Fetta's in both locations, if they still have their location out west too. And that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah.
Is there another Greek place I'm forgetting?
There's a couple of places that serve Greek food. But
There's one like in Papillion, like in a mall.
Yes, and she is actually from South. She's from South Omaha, but has a Greek ancestry, so it's a mixed menu.
Huh.
So
Is it good?
It's good. Yeah, it is really good. Yeah, I used to work in Papillion, and so I was over there when she did her grand opening, so it was very nice. So look back at
just in general though, Greek food. And even in Greece, the best food is at home, not at a restaurant.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. So, by the way, both my sons went to Lewis and Clark.
As did I.
For junior high, I guess it was middle school at the time when you went there.
No, junior high.
It was junior high there too? Okay, so I want to go back to then. Did you already know what you wanted to be? Because a lot of us, I always wanted to be on TV as a little kid. Did you know exactly what you wanted to be even going back that far?
It was scary. Look, I was movie crazy. And I remember even at Lewis and Clark, they used to have an 8th grade humanities program where if you had those kind of leanings and if you were kind of, good at your studies, you were invited to participate in this like special group called humanities. Man, I remember in 7th grade being asked to give the 8th grade humanities class a lecture in film history.
Wow.
Because they knew how film crazy I was.
Yeah.
And then in 8th grade did the same thing. I had a film collection on not even Super 8, but regular 8. And I had a little film collection. I brought my projector in and, ran scenes which illustrated the points I was making. And then I got into journalism, and at prep and high school, I was like on the paper, and then yearbook editor. And then I got to college, and I just couldn't go to law school like my parents were wanting me to do. Mm-hmm. I knew I could pursue either film. I wanted to go to film school. I wasn't even thinking about being a director. I was just thinking it would be so cool to go to film school, And as I said, I grew up with in an immigrant family, second generation, but still you have the same ideals. Mm-hmm. It's basically just law, medicine, and business that you're allowed to go into. But when I was a senior in college and got an acceptance letter into film school, I just knew I had to try it. I had no idea if I'd be any good at it.
Right.
But that didn't matter. I just knew that I didn't want to go on and do anything else in my life until I had at least tried it. Mm-hmm. My dad had a restaurant. He was partners with his father. His father had started a restaurant at 14th and Douglas in 1920. And my dad was in it the last 20 years of the restaurant's life. And he got 8mm projector as a bonus from Kraft Foods.
Wow.
And brought it home. And first, my older brothers were like, you could go, what you do to get movies at the time is you'd go to the camera store. So they got, Abbott and Costello and Frankenstein from Castle Films. And we'd run movies. And I just completely fell in love with that.
Wow.
And then soon enough, my brothers lost interest in it, but I never did. I still have the projector. And that kind of got me started.
Why California? You mentioned getting accepted to film school, but there are other places, obviously, closer to where we are, but going all the way out to Stanford. Why?
In terms of film school, you just want to go to the best possible place.
Okay.
And it had been instilled in me. I mean, one thing my parents did instill was the importance of education. And my dad, I gotta say, as the son of a guy who came over penniless from Greece, wound up going 2 years to Grinnell and 2 years to Dartmouth.
Wow.
In the 30s.
Yeah.
So, and my mother too came from a family that really valued education, and they passed those values on to my brothers and me. And so I was very much encouraged to go to the best possible college I could get into, and my dad took me like on the college tour in New England, and then anyway, I got into Stanford and I thought, sounds good to me.
Yeah. How much has getting a project greenlighted changed in your almost 30 years of doing this?
It's always hard. It's degrees of more hard or less hard.
It's never easy.
Never easy. Never easy. And even after I've had successes, it's still hard to get the next one, because I like even though I'm considered to have like a style, or my movies are all in a certain sensibility, from moment to moment, like day to day, it's like, oh yeah, we like your last one. What do you want to do next? Well, here's this. It feels too new and different, or too risky. And also, I don't always go in for wanting to have big movie stars in my movies. I want to cast whoever I think is appropriate. And when you don't have big movie stars, it immediately lowers their interest in financing it.
Sure.
And if they do finance it, the budget you get. But let me just say that, having said that, it's always kind of hard and tricky. Obviously, I've had some pretty good luck.
Right. Yeah. I just seems like it's easier to make a movie now, technically, with the equipment we have, right? But it seems like to me that convincing someone to give a bunch of money for an idea that's in your head would be pretty hard to do.
Well, look, here we've got these wonderful cameras which did not exist 15 years ago, 20 years. So the means of production,
right.
So you can do a extremely high quality movie on that camera and that camera,
right,
with excellent sound, and then you can edit it on your laptop. And all of that used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars,
right, and
lots of manpower to get all that stuff done. Now the means of production is highly successful, it's been democratized, basically. But to get something distributed theatrically, you really, in general, a higher level of talent in front of the camera, not the camera itself, but the talent and the quality of the story and the efficiency of the storytelling. For that kind of stuff, and better production values and a little more visual scope, you do still need someone to give you some dough.
Gotcha. Right.
You
have taken on some big topics in your movies. Go back to Citizen Ruth and the discussion on both sides of the abortion debate. Roe gets overturned by the Supreme Court. I wonder, as someone who dove deep into that to make a movie on it, your thoughts on the way now it's handled, state to state.
Right. Well, first of all, Citizen Ruth we thought it would be, Jim Taylor and I, my co-writer, thought it'd be daring and kind of subversive and fun to dive into abortion as a pool, but really thematically that movie isn't about abortion. Thematically, that movie is more about fanaticism, and a comedy, a satire of fanaticism, using the incendiary abortion debate. But when Dobbs came down last year, the year before, and Roe was overturned, Laura Dern and I fielded a lot of calls.
Really?
It was a very small film. It cost $2 million to make and made nothing at the box office. It got me started in my career and did its job. And we're proud of the film, and we had a good time making it, shot here in Omaha. But it was kind of a double-edged sword. Laura Dern and I did, interviewed for the Washington Post and some other publications saying, well, how do you feel that you made such a prescient movie? And it's, and it was double-edged because on the one hand, we were sad for the reason that movie is still considered relevant, but also happy that people still watch it.
Right. Well, it was one of the first things I thought about when it came down, and I understand why a reporter would start looking up movies that involve that,
right?
And you pop up, so it makes sense.
Well, it's a funny thing too. When that movie came out, I didn't get a single protest letter or complaint. Like nobody, I think it was so under the radar, or maybe I thought I guess I pulled my punches too much. It's too nice or something. Now, by comparison, it's considered a much more subversive and a bold film, which it kind of was not at the time.
So are there threads? You mentioned earlier that people think of it that way. Are there threads of either Omaha or just your life in each one of your movies, or are they all just fresh thoughts?
Both. I want each movie to be new and different and kind of unlike, to some degree, unlike anything I've done before. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that. Each movie kind of, this isn't my term, but builds its own world. You see Honolulu, you see rural Nebraska, you see in the new one, you see Boston in 1970.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Massachusetts. So, but you can't avoid who you are. So there are thematic concerns which tie them together. And then to your other part of your question, autobiographical things turn up even unconsciously. And other people may not know that they are autobiographical. I may not even know that they're autobiographical until later. Until later when I see it and go, oh yeah, right. I was going through that at my time, or I put that joke in because that's kind of how I feel about X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. It's interesting when you see your movies, because my movies are all very personal, if not ostensibly autobiographical.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is it about Paul Giamatti and your chemistry?
I love him. I love Paul Giamatti.
You have good chemistry with your actor, especially if it's a lead like that. It's so much a big part of the movie.
It helps because then a director has partners. You don't make a movie alone.
Right.
So when I'm writing, I have my co-writer as a partner. When I'm scouting locations, I have the production designer and the location manager as partners. In the moment of making the film, shooting the film, I've got the assistant director, but the key is the cinematographer. He or she and I are partners in that moment. But then also, the director has to be, or ideally should be, partners with the lead actor, because he or she is kind of team captain and will set the tone for how all the other actors kind of rally around the flag of the film you're making. So, and I've had pretty good luck with that. Yeah. Maybe I haven't had the best relationship with secondary actors. I've never had a bad one, but in terms of being really close, it's really beautiful, man, when you've got a good relationship with the lead. And I was so lucky I had that with Laura Dern in Citizen Ruth. And we remain close friends, but we had a very tight, creative sense of the movie we were making. And then I've had that also with Paul Giamatti 20 years ago in Sideways, and now with this one. We just really get each other creatively.
One of my favorite things is the hero's journey. I always love that, going back to British Lit. And I watched Holdovers, and I watched the way we think of Paul going through the movie. Then we start learning things about his life. And at the end, he does a heroic act. Do you enjoy making movies like that, where you're taking someone through that entire transformation, or at least the person watching the movie is watching someone go through that transformation?
The older I get, the more interested I am in what is a classic story. That Joseph Campbell talked about, that screenwriting, goes back to Aristotle and Campbell. And I have a recommendation to make, by the way, right now, for anyone interested in story and movies. TCM just finished running a 6-part documentary called The Power of Film with Howard Suber, who in fact had been a teacher of mine at UCLA. And he's retired now, he's in his 80s, and some other UCLA folks got him to sit down and basically teach a distilled version of his class. And then they illustrated it extremely brilliantly with clips. And you learn so much about what is a story. I mean, he's asking the question, we're all aware of popular films, but what makes a film both popular and memorable? Why do we have this canon of films that were popular in their day, and with some exceptions, but remain part of our collective consciousness? And he answers it really well, and in ways that connect to what you're asking about classic storytelling, the hero's path, journey, what he or she needs to do. It's and then by extension, who are we? So when you start to answer what is a story, you're analyzing a story outside of yourself, but really what you're doing is looking at something inside of yourself, and that's why we respond to it.
I was going to say that because a big part of it is when you watch it too, right? Like where you are in your life. Like people my age defend the original Star Wars trilogy to the death. The kids who watch the prequels, they defend that because where they were...
They're wrong.
I know they're wrong. But where they were in their life, that was the movie that touched them because they were that age or where they lived.
Then when you have children, you should only show them the first three first at the right age.
We did.
And especially The Empire Strikes Back. That's the
Which
best.
is the best.
That's the best one.
Five.
Can you name the director of The Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, I know exactly who it is, and right now it's not going to remember. It's right there on the tip of my tongue. I can see him, the mustache.
Irvin Kershner.
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting that the director of one of the most successful blockbuster films of all times remains largely unknown?
Right. Yeah. And if he comes back for Jedi, no offense to anybody who loves Jedi's a better movie. Because I know he had a bunch of ideas of things he wanted.
Irvin Kershner.
Yes, he had a bunch of ideas. He didn't want to do the Ewoks.
I just mentioned that. I did that detour because I have a buddy who knew Kershner.
And shot him a lot toward the end of his life, and is now editing together a documentary called The Forgotten Director.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I will definitely look for it.
That would be awesome. Why only 8 films in 27 years?
I'm slow with screenplay.
The writing of it?
Yeah. I want to be, rather than sitting here wasting my time talking to you today, I'd rather be making a film. But it's the script. But I want to be doing it all the time, and at the same time, I kind of want to speak only when I have something to say. And conceiving, putting in the work to the screenplay, getting it all, that's one thing I've been a little bit slow at.
It's not crazy because Tarantino's only made a certain amount. Certain actors.
Yeah, Sergio Leone directed 7 features in his lifetime. Stanley Kubrick 13.
Yeah.
Quality, quantity, you can have that discussion. But I really envy the Hollywood directors of the studio system who would do 3 a year. Oh my God, all the filmmaking.
Tough, yeah.
Yeah.
What's it like when you get nominated? Holder Rose comes out, and right away you hear people talking about Academy buzz. Film gets nominated. Paul Giamatti gets nominated. What's Mary Lamb gets nominated?
She's probably going to win.
Yeah, I hope she does.
No, it's pretty much in the bag.
Good.
Yeah, it's pretty much in the bag.
I didn't recognize Mary Lamb at first, by the way, the name.
Yeah. It's a little obvious. Yeah.
I didn't catch it. But what's that feeling like the last couple of weeks or 3 weeks since the nominations came out?
Really groovy. It's great to be. Look, it's so hard to get to make movies. It's so hard to make a movie. It's so hard to make a good one. It's so hard to make a good one that gets enthusiastic distribution. It's so hard to have one that gets enthusiastic distribution that then is considered for awards. Like, I'm in a really privileged place, like right now with this movie out and so forth, and that it got 5 Oscar nominations. You can take it only so seriously, because the other part of you recoils at the idea of competition in the arts. How can you really say this is better than that? It's apples and oranges.
Right.
I mean, so if you put aside that philosophical objection we have, or basic objection you have to competition in the arts, and kind of see, well, it's for entertainment purposes only. It's fun. I mean, the fun, this sounds like a cliche, but it's really true. The fun thing is getting the nomination. Who wins? Yeah, it's awesome. I've won. It's great.
Yeah.
But the nomination is the real gift.
Why did a movie like Downsizing, with a great concept, Matt Damon's a wonderful actor. I think the story is incredible. Why do you think that wasn't necessarily widely?
You mean why it
loved?
tanked?
You can go with that if you want. Obviously, the topic can be divisive for a lot of people in terms of climate change.
Yeah, it's not that. I think it's a really good idea. Jim and I were sitting on that idea for years, and we continue to stand by that idea. I've been asked it a couple times in this interview process cycle around the holdovers, because that was my last one. And kind of the answer I've been saying is that were Jim Taylor and I to do that today, it's probably an idea better served by a limited series than by a feature film.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because it's a huge idea, and you keep going, well, then this would happen, then this would happen, and then this would happen.
Right.
And then, like, where do you break it off? And so we wound up kind of trying to stuff 20 pounds of sausage into about a 9-pound casing. And then with often very flimsy narrative threads connecting one section to the other section, which in a movie sounds like, oh, what's this Shaggy Dog story, tonal shift, which might be more forgiven in a series where it's like, oh, wait till you get to the 4th hour. You never could have seen that coming.
Right.
They go in an entirely different direction.
It's funny you brought that up. I was going to ask you about those. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? The Bear is one of my...
I hear it's great. I still haven't seen it.
It's a great show, but it would make a bad movie because I think you'd walk out of it and your brain would just be going every direction.
Right.
But you could stop and go back to the next episode. And would you think about doing something like that?
If offered me, but my brain currently to date defaults to movies.
Right.
I like movies. Mm-hmm. And even nowadays, people are like, well, have you seen Succession? Have you seen The Bear? Have you seen, this, that, and the other? It's like, yeah, I want to.
It's a commitment.
And then when I go to turn it on, I go, well, what do I have recorded from TCM?
Right.
And I still default, because there's so many magnificent older films to watch. Like there's literally in your lifetime, you won't be able to watch all the great films which have already been made. And I just sort of enjoy movies, particularly older movies. Now, having said that, I've watched all of The Wire twice.
Right.
And The Sopranos is awesome. The classics, and Breaking Bad. And
what about a Western?
Thinking about it.
Would you set it in Nebraska?
Yeah.
In the Wild West, so
80s.
80s, okay.
1880s,
Yeah.
kind of 20 years after the Homestead Act. And we're thinking about Custer County, Nebraska, only because a lot was written about Custer County, Nebraska. It's a very documented county here in Nebraska. Now, whether it would be shot there, I don't know. I can't say for sure, because where do you find prairie? Where do you find that? Like, that's why so many Westerns, going back even to Unforgiven, have been shot in Canada.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of shooting in Canada, shooting an American story. But anyway, let's not put the cart before the horse. First, we have to get the script right.
The area around Fort Robinson is
We'll get out,
amazing out there.
but not so prairie-like.
Not
That's
prairie
it's,
enough, okay.
it's a lot drier.
Yeah. What about a horror movie?
Love to make a horror movie. And I watch some horror movies, and there are some good ones. The trouble with them that you have to figure out is they all like are really great, and then you're let down by the ending.
Sometimes, yeah. Very true.
And then I'd like to know one that you think where you're not let down by the ending.
The end of Saw, the original Saw.
Okay.
I still think of to this day. My son had been in the hospital, and we're watching this. He's asleep, obviously, and we're watching it in the hospital. And I remember thinking to myself, "This is incredible." Like, it had me, pulled me in.
Through the ending.
All the way through the ending.
All right.
Yeah.
'Cause
It
often-
didn't need to be made anymore, but that. No,
Often the trouble with them is that the climax of the movie has also to serve sort of as the explanation
Gotcha.
of why that phenomenon has occurred, this abnormal phenomenon. And so great movies like Hereditary and It Follows and Smile are
How about
so
movies
awesome.
Like The Exorcist, something like that.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Rosemary's Baby is
Baby, oh,
fantastic
yeah.
because it just is, and it ends on a moment of horror. There's no release. Like, the horror is just beginning
One of the
at
great
the end.
posters, too, of all time. One of the great movie posters.
In my apartment here in Omaha, not only do I have that one, but I have two Polish
Really?
posters of Rosemary. At one point, my dream was to do my entire apartment in Rosemary's Baby
Wow.
because they're such cool images.
Yeah. Last couple, how much did it change you having a child? In the way you work, the way you handle your life, everything? I know it changed me when I had both mine.
Say something from your. Let me say something.
Well, I was never as emotional as I am now after having my first kid.
How many do you have? How many do you have
I have
now?
two. I have two boys, both teenagers now, and I'll watch a commercial and get more emotional than I ever did in my whole life, and I really believe a part of it.
Yeah, I think it definitely. It's a cliche. People talk about it a lot, but opening up more doors to your heart. And
I also handle people, I think, better. Like, I taught my son how to drive. We all end up going through that. Now I feel I don't get as mad as a person that's driving in front of me I used to. So I'm thinking, maybe that's some kid and his dad's trying to teach him how to
cool. That's cool. Did you take him to a Walmart parking lot or something, or go? You know, my older brother taught me to drive in the Lewis and Clark parking lot.
Really?
He'd take me. We had a Galaxy Ford 500, and
We went to Westroads
we went to Western's parking lot. Yeah.
a lot of the times, and Council Bluffs.
Huh.
There's not a lot of traffic over there. That was
Very good.
easy. Yeah. So, yeah. So what's next?
I'm going to go back to my apartment and I was at Costco just now and put the groceries away.
Right. Professionally, what do you think?
Oh, I got to get back to writing. So this period of, what is today? February 6th? Today's February 6th.
Yep.
So I'm still this is a moment where I get to be in Omaha for a week before I go back into some more promotional activities and travel and stuff like that for a few more weeks. This is a great period, but it just takes like a 5-month plug out of my life because it's hard then to really focus on. Basically, I got to get back to writing and figure. So I don't know what my next movie will be. Thank you for the interest. But I got
a spot in the house. Do you write in the bed? Is there a desk? Do you have to sit in a certain spot?
I'm coming to the point now where I think it's impossible to work at home. Even if you have a space set aside for yourself at home, you got to get out of the house. Right. I went to a public library today to work. I met a friend I went to Costco, met a friend for lunch. And then, but before that, I put in a couple hours at, of all places, the Elkhorn Public Library.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, I support Flatwater Free Press. We all should.
No doubt. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. Hope you feel it was worth the wait.
It was great.
Okay, good. See you later.